Okay, this is the desktop presentation for the second part of lesson 1, the nuts and bolts of Cisco iOS, where we're going to get a little deep in Cisco iOS and talk about ways we can use it effectively. So here's the presentation, and then what I'm going to do is hit present, and I'm also going to have ready to go my interface into a switch which is running on GNS3. This is of course the virtual switch, so it's not or the simulated switch, so it's not 100%. Point is, like, the config register 00, not 0x2102 or the default or anything like that. So or 2142 to ignore the startup config, but we'll work through it. All right. So let's talk about operating under the in Cisco iOS. All right. So the question mark is your friend, and there's no dishonor in using it. The simple fact of the matter is there's many different versions of iOS, and many different flavors of iOS, Knox OS and Finesse, the firewall operating system. So it's not uncommon for a Cisco engineer to hit the question mark. So let's go into config mode, stuff we talked about last class, last lesson, where we're in config mode. I had config T. Well, right here, if I do configure, I'm going to do con. I'll do question mark. There's 3 different cons. Now, and I tried to tab it out just now too. That's what that boop noise is. When I tried to tab it out right there, it didn't let me because there are 2 words, and that's what I did there. I had con question mark, and it's going to show me that there's configure and connect. Right? Those are the 2 possible commands. So the moment I do conf, right, I can then we know that's a unique word, only configure, right? So Cisco will actually do you a favor, and once it becomes unique, we'll assume the rest of the word. Now, if I put a question mark, so again, if I put a question mark right after it, it's going to list all the things that start with con and f. If I put a space in a question mark, it's going to list all the things I can configure. Off the top of my head, I'll tell you that config memory is for when you want to configure the startup config, which you only use once in a great while. I know some administrators and ISPs use that. That way they can set automatic reboot time for the router and fail it over and all that good stuff, and to load a new config if they need to. Anyway, so let's do config. Let's go to config mode again. If I config and then T, if I hit question mark after T, there's only terminal, which is the one we're going to do. Again, it's just tradition. Config T. That's the thing that's beaten into most Cisco engineers to get into config mode. Hopefully that makes sense as far as the lab I was just working on, which was with firewalls, had a lot of access lists. Access list is a popular one to have a lot. And we're not going to have a whole lot of access list options here because this is a switch, and we don't tend to do a lot of. But there's a lot of things you want to kind of look up. Like case in point, we're going to talk about this when we talk about access lists. But these numbers have meaning, and instead of me memorizing all these numbers, I want an extended IP list, so I'll do 101. Right, and now I can go. Okay, I want to do deny. You know what I mean? It's not unusual for a technician to go through. Oh, that's right. Deny is first. All right, deny IP. Right, any. Right. Is it the source or destination for source? Any, and then what's the destination? Is it destination next? Yeah, it is. Any. Right. Or if I want to go a little bit more crazy, I go TCP. Any. And then we'll make it a specific network, 10.10.10.0, 255.255.255.255.0. And then, wait, what do I want to do? Oh, equal, that's right. And then what are my options for what protocols I can run with TCP? Okay, www, right. Or I could just put the port number itself, right? So again, by using question mark, it helps me. Here's the port number listed up here. And they actually do you a favor by listing a lot of port numbers too, right here. So, anyway, point is, that's what that's there for. Okay, is the question mark. No one expects you to memorize everything all the time. So remember the question mark. If you put it right after right after a word, it's going to sit there and give you all the possibilities, like AC. Once I do, I'm going to access and then put an L. Access list. I can go to the next. If I put a space after it, then it's going to let me know what the next keyword is. Okay. Now the other thing we can do is tab things out, because again, Cisco will sit there and say access L. Okay, that's unique. It's only access list. I'll run access list. I can also tab that out just like we do in Linux. Okay, or most Linux operating systems. They've kind of adopted this, which is nice. I'll do permit here, and I can. Oh, permit's not special. What is there? TCP/IP. It's permit first. See, I should have question marked it. So we'll do permit, and I'll tab it out. Permit, right? IP. Any, right? So there you go. I can make my life easier by tabbing things out. All right, let's move on. Again, tab. So real quick, access list. Well, you saw it right there, actually. Like an idiot, I tried to type access list 101, and like an idiot, I put IP at first instead of permit first, like I meant to. If I hit enter, notice how there's going to be a little, let me move this down so you can see it better, hopefully. There we go. See how there's a little arrow right there, right? That arrow indicates is where I went wrong. That's where Cisco goes, I don't know what you mean, you stupid human. What are you doing, right? That's where the command dumped out. So I can sit there and say, oh wait, no IP. Why? And if I'm completely clueless, I can sit there and access list type it back out. 101. I thought I could do IP. Oh no. Oh, I got to do permit first. And then I do IP. Okay. So again, it lets you know when you IP, and then let's say do any. Incomplete command is the other one, right? I need a source and destination because this is an extended list. We'll talk about that later when we talk about access lists. But the point is, Cisco then comes back and says, no, you're wrong. This is as friendly as Cisco gets, so take it. So again, don't forget the arrow. The arrow's your friend when you make a mistake. It lets you know where you went wrong, so use it, and there you go. Now there's lots of controls here. Some of the, Control A can be somewhat useful because I'll go over how I'm repeating these commands in a second, but if I hit Control A, notice that it jumped right back to the front. That's kind of nice, and then Control E dumps right to the end. It's a nice thing to have. It's not the greatest thing. You don't have to memorize it. I'm not gonna, it's good to know, all right? Escape B moves you back one word. Control B moves back one character. Control F moves forward one character. Escape F moves forward one word. I'm going to blow through these real quick. Control delete deletes one character, the character you're on. So if I, for whatever reason, want to make this access list 10 instead of 101, I can hit Control D, and there you go. Now it's access list 10. Okay. Backspace, which is what I'm doing right now, is what I use most of the time to delete things. Control R redisplays the line. Sometimes we'll get messages. So case in point right here, if I do exit and then I get config T up, re-showed it. All right. Sometimes you'll get a message that interrupts you, or something will come in. It'll split the line. It might help you to do a Control R and redisplay your line as that you're on. Okay. Control U just erases that whole line. There you go. Control W erases a whole word. So let's go to config T again. If I hit Control W, it's going to erase that T, that keyword. All right. So an important one, config T, will go into interface config mode. So I'll go in. I'm in a switch. So let's do Ethernet. Third, one thing I need to talk about in the online classes, which I forgot to bring up, it's not critical because you can see the listings. Let me do show run here. It's not critical because you can see the interfaces. So if I want to go to interface, for example, 1.1, I can do that, right? I can see that there. I can do it. So I just config T. Oh, I'm already in config mode. See, int Ethernet 1.1, right? And now I'm in config interface mode. There I am, config if. So just to let you know where this naming scheme comes from, do show run again. I'll tell you what, I'll begin at 00. So this beg is short for begin. I can't tab it out because of do doesn't work very well in this. So again, do I'm going to execute it as an enable command. If I really wanted to show it, and I can show what I was working on getting back to, Control Z. If I'm in inf mode, or I'm in any other mode but enable mode, and I want to get to enable mode quickly, I can hit Control Z, it'll bring me back to enable mode. Okay. If I now do a show run, and I'm going to do begin, I'm going to pipe. So see this pipe right here, this pipe right here. That's telling me I want to produce this output, and I'm going to use the pipe to search through that output. So I'm going to begin the output whenever it sees a 00, which will be Ethernet 00. There you go. So there's Ethernet 00, and I just want to show you all the access, all the ports, all the ports on this switch. Okay, and if you notice, it goes 0, 1 to 00 actually, which is odd. In the real world, switches tend not to have a 0 port because help desks and users get freaked out when they see a 0 port. So they traditionally, switches have only a 1 port, while routers will have a 0 port. That's what the second one is, right? So if I was to draw this switch in the real world, in the front, directly attached to the motherboard, would be 4 ports, and then every time you see this number increment by 1, you're going to see that's an expansion card. Okay, and that's what's going on here. This is a weird switch that doesn't exist in the real world. Okay, it has 4 ports on the motherboard: port 0, port 1, port 2, port 3, and then 1, 2, 3 expansion cards, all with 4 ports starting at 0. That's what that means. Okay, so just FYI, it's not critical to know, just something I've picked up over the years. So we did Control Z. You can do Control P to look at your previous lines, or you can use the up arrow. And this is going to give me, so we'll do Control N. So if I go up to and I hit Control N, I'm going back, right? So it shows the previous command. So I can go up, Control P, or down, Control N. Or I can use the arrow keys, and this is what most people do, including myself. I just use the up. Right now I'm using the up key, down key, right? And then I bring a command up, I can use the left or right and get to the command I want to get to. And let's say I want to begin this at 1, 0 instead of 0, 0. There you go. Okay, that's all there is to it. Oh, by the way, I hit Control C to end the output right there. So let's talk about the console port, and we'll do that by going into the line. I don't have one to show you, although I could be creative here. And Cisco console port, and get a picture of one up. So images. This, well, that's the new USB port. There you go. There's both. It's a 2960. All right. So this is a 2960. It's got 2 consoles. It has a the traditional RJ45 connector, and that is a USB mini. They were a day late and $1 short when it comes to this stuff, so they should have waited till the C's come out before they push these out. But anyway, so Cisco's most of the equipment from the 2010s and earlier had the RJ45. Anything after should have both, although I believe they're going to start pushing out products with just a USB-C. All right, and we're going to use something called a console cable. Now, modern day computers don't have. Let me get a picture of it. Well, here's an old school console cable going to a serial port. Let's get a console cable up. So an old school console cable would have a 9-pin serial cable at one end. All right. Traditionally, they're always powder blue. It's just the way it is. I'm pretty sure I hit enter. That's weird. Okay. My enter key didn't seem to be working. So here's the old school one. Okay, we had a 9-pin serial, and then this is a rollover cable. It's not a crossover cable. It's a rollover cable. So pin 1 goes to pin 8, and pin there's only 8 pins. One of these is a null termination. In other words, it doesn't terminate to anything. But the RJ45 is a rollover cable. Now, most laptops nowadays do not have serial ports, so what we tend to use is USBs. This is the one I have some of these. Matter of fact, I might even say I bought them before if I'm logged in. So this is the type of cable I have in my classroom. Well, that's all right. That's not what I wanted, but there you go. So it's got a USB port on one side and a RJ45 on the other, and that's what's going to plug into the console port. All right. The newer devices, here you go. This is an older device where it just has the old school, and then the aux port, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's what it looks like physically, the console port. You want to set it at 9600 bits per second. That this is set in stone. This goes back to the 80s. So 98 bits per second, 8 data bits, no parity, stop bit 1 or true if you want, and flow control none. Okay, you need to have physical access to the device. All right, and then what you would do is you plug into it, and that is the console port, which is going to be so I'll do a show run, and I'm going to begin line. Where you see the command line. Here are the lines actually. I'll give myself some space and put it down here so you can see it better. Excuse me. So here's line con 0. That's short for console. Again, this is an oddball. This is an auxiliary port. Switches tend not to have auxiliary ports. We'll talk. So an auxiliary port is for modems. Okay. What would happen is you'd use the console cable to plug in to get local access, but with the aux port you could plug it into a modem and dial into that modem and start configuring the switch or the router. They were for routers because if you think about it, if a router's configuration gets messed up or the IP gets wiped out, guess what? You're not going to be able to do to it. Telnet or SSH into it, right? Because you can't get IP connectivity. So that's why they have aux ports. Is that we can dial into a modem and that modem will get in and get us in. It's almost like a console port. It just is meant to go through a modem. All right. Both those you need physical access to get to. What's more fun, do it from your desk, is a virtual terminal. And again, that is right over here. If I do line, you'll see there's 4. Traditionally, again, this is weird. Traditionally, most devices will have VTI 0 through 16. Yes, 0 based. Welcome to Cisco. So this has 5 lines it can support. Most of them support 16. And if I wanted to configure those lines, what I would do is I could do line con 0, and I'm into the console port, and I can tell it to have a password, set a password up for it, so that way if someone connects up to the console port, they need a password. Again, the simulator doesn't really work really well with this, so we're not going to bother doing it. It's kind of a hassle. Or we'll do it later. We'll set up the virtual lines, but the console port, this doesn't console well. The simulator doesn't go through the same steps as it should. If I do a line, so if I wanted to configure all the virtual lines, what I do is line VTY and then I 0, and here you go. We'll use our friend question mark. Oh, I won't. What is going on? I can't go from line to line? That's weird. I thought you could. Line, so we're going to go VTY, and then I can do a question mark, and it's going to say you can 0 through 4. I'll do 0. I do a space and another question mark. It says, hey, you can do 4 too. In other words, I can do all the lines. I can do all 5 lines at one time. All right. So there you go. But you're going to need IP connectivity to get this working, and that's why it's kind of outside the scope of the first 2 labs in this class, is because I don't want to. We're going to have to set up the VLAN because switches don't have IP addresses on interfaces. So we'll have to set up the VLAN 1, and we'll do that. We can do that by doing in VLAN 1. Okay, it's not letting me go out of lines. If I do in VLAN 1, I'm in the VLAN now, and I can set an IP address. Okay, that's what we're going to have to do in a future lab. But right now, we're not going to do that. All right, as VLAN 1 is show run, begin. I'll do include. Well, there's also the popular one also is include with one eye. Include, and then it will include anyone with that line. So in this case, if I put VLAN, for example, it's going to say interface VLAN 1. If I begin there, it's going to start running the config from that position. So that's really what I want. Just letting you know that include does exist. So if I begin there, there's my interface VLAN 1, no IP address, and it's shut down. All right, so. All right, there's a virtual termination. Show, we've been doing that, a lot of that. Show essentially is a command. It runs in enable mode. So there it is, show, and if I do a question mark, I can show lots of things, okay? Really, we'd run it out of enable mode to see things. I can check out my VLAN transfer protocol. I think version. Yeah, I could just do version or status. There you go. Which it should be. Yeah, there you go. I'm in server mode. So I can show all kinds of things with show. All right. So piping, we've done that a bit. So again, when a command gets lots of output, you can tell it you only want to include the gigabit. So if I just want to see how many ports this thing had, and I know they're all Ethernet, I can do a show run include Ethernet. All right. There you go. There's all my interfaces. Okay. Or if I want to show all my interfaces, including my VLAN interfaces, I can do interface. Although I might get more. There you go. These are all my interfaces, including VLAN 1. I can also do show interface, but then I get a lot more information. I can start parsing that out. Up, up. Why is 1, 2 up, up? I wish it should be connected to it. 1, 1 is up, up. That's all right. Simulator's being weird. Okay. All right. Show it. Exact match, case sensitive, that's the way to use the pipe. Can add further items by piping twice, acts as on or, so that's kind of a pain in the butt. So include interface, I have to remember the command, include, IP. Didn't take it. Or there's no IP address. This is IP address. Include IP address. Oh. There's a way to double pipe. Anyway, there you go. So banners. Let's talk about banners. If I go into config mode, and I go banner. You can see there's a number of them. There's one for every time we go into exact. We're going to play with this in the lab. Message of the day is really popular. MOTD. Login for when you first log in. You can do location, reminders, telling people to log in, make sure they save their config, to upload it to a TFTP server, whatever they got to do. All right. So that's what banners are meant for. The way you set a banner. So let's set a banner MTD. Oop. Yeah. Message of the day. There you go. Now, if you notice, it says C banner text C, where C is the delimiting character. In other words, whatever character I type in first is the end character. Because what you can do is you can put return keys. So let's just say an end character is determine which one I did in the labs. It's funny because the moment I sit there and say, "Oh, I won't use that character," I then want to use that character. So let's just do let's do a pipe. So we're going to do a pipe. I don't think that's special. So when I type pipe, it's going to end. So I'm saying this is enter. Whoops. This is enter the message of the day. Okay. Again, enter. But it's not until I hit pipe again that then it's done. Okay. So if I do a do show run, and I'm going to begin MOTD. You can say this is the banner, this is the message of the day, and you can see they end up using Control C because that's the way they like it. So this is, and I screwed up there, so it's going to actually say this is the message of the day. All right. So again, message of the day, login, and exe are the three big ones. All right. Exec process is when you get into the actual exec process. Login is when you first just before you log into the switch, and message of the day is after you log in on the switch. All right. So host name, enabling and disabling ports. So if you want to change the host name, which we'll do in the lab, you just type out host, and then you can or tab it out. Well, it's just host, and I'm just going to do example.1. Okay. There you go, and that's my new host name, example.1. All right, enabling, disabling ports. Again, as you saw, but with a switch, ports tend to be enabled by default. That way, they work out of the box. The switch would work right out of the box. Just plug it in, and you can plug into it. It's a dumb layer 2 switch. But if I want to disable a port, for example, I go to int Ethernet. Let's go to Ethernet 3.1, and I do a shutdown. It's going to shut down the port. Okay, and I'll come up with a message telling me it's administratively down. It's down to administratively down. Okay, so if I do a do show int now and I go to 3.1, which is going to be pretty far down here. There it is administratively down. Okay, now the fun thing with Cisco is if I do a do show run, right, I'm going to be able to go through and say, why is 3.1 not working? That's weird. Someone shut it down. It's currently the running config is shut down. That's not good, right? So Cisco is kind of very good for reverse engineering because the config is it's always going to be in that running config. You can sit there and say, why is that command there, right? Should it be there? Should it not be there? So when you want to remove a command, you have the power of no. Okay, so if I do a no shut, which is short for no shutdown, I hit enter, I'm now taking that command away. It's going to tell me it's back up in a second. There it is. There it is. Here's 3.1. Then you notice that command is now gone. Okay, so there you go. The power of no, and that's enabling and disabling ports. Enable passwords, login passwords, and username password. All right, so there's different ways to create authentication. We got to get out of interface mode. I'm in config mode now. I'm going to do I can set enable password. Here's a simple enable password. And it'll be, we'll call it SW1. Here's the problem with enable password though, do show run, is it just shows up in the config. Not very secure. Try to find where that is. I can just, here, make my life easier. Oh, I forgot to include. Alright, so there's enable password encryption. Oh, there it is, enable password SW1. Okay, that's not ideal. So Cisco came up with an enable secret, which overrides the enable password to get into enable mode. In a real switch, in order to get enable mode, you would need these passwords. So we'll just call it SW1 secret. There you go. And I'll hit enter. Now if I do a do show run include pass, you're going to notice that enable. I don't want enable is what I want to show. There you go. I have the enable password as SW1, and then it creates a hash of the password and stores the hash and compares the hash with the password it puts in. Right? Traditional operating system behavior, at least in the 21st century. So that's much better. And ultimately, we have username and password. So I can set up a username and password by doing user, or short for username. The name of the user, in this case, I'll make one for me, JJ Alves. And then I can do all kinds of things. Now, privilege level is something we haven't talked about yet, but privilege level is 0 through 16 rating, which means 15 is highest because it's 0 based. So at 15, you have all the privilege. Okay. Again, I'm going to do password. Why not secret here? It's because password works just as well. There's an encryption service running in the background. That's what that command in there, the startup config, was saying when I was doing the do show pass. No service password encryption. I got to enable that, I suppose. So I'm going to do password. I'm going to just type in my password we'll call it password 1. Or actually, the traditional bad password for Cisco is Cisco. Now, be careful. Always end in password, and I bump into this every semester with some student who locks himself out of their account because they start putting in other commands. Once you do password, it's just going to keep reading it. So if I did password and then I'm trying to think of MAC, so I'm going to limit to what MAC address I can do. It's going to still think Cisco space Mac is the password. So be careful about that. So the password here is going to be Cisco. I hit enter. If I do a do show run, I'm going to see there's the username right there. And unfortunately, it's not encrypted because, so I got to do service password encryption. I gotta turn that on, and that's it. Let's see if that did it. I gotta remember how that's by default. I gotta do show run. I'm in config mode. By default, this is normally turned on, so it's weird. There it is, and it encrypted my password with a. This is a really weak hash, actually, if you look at it. So that's not an ideal hash. This is a much better hash, but whatever. So this is a weak hash. But there you go. So that service password encryption is now running in the background of the switch and encrypting all the encrypting my user's passwords. There you go. Okay, so it's going to have a local database for username and password. All right. So documentation. If you go into an interface here in Ethernet 01, if I want to put in a description of why something's doing it, uplink. It's always important. Matter of fact, I usually put arrows and uplink. To LAN, right? There you go. That way it shows up a little bit. When I do a do show run, it's going to show up a little bit more aggressively when I tap through because I got those arrows there. But something to show it off. Okay. So documenting best you can. Access list, you can put remarks, that type of thing. Okay. Running config, startup config. Again, running config is in RAM. Dynamic RAM. Running config is startup is NVRAM, non-volatile RAM, right? If all this stuff I just did, I haven't since done copy run start, which right now, believe me, my fingers want to do it because it's just beating into my head, right? But I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do a reload, and all that work I just did is going to go bye-bye, right? It's going to warn me too. Hey, you made changes to the config. Are you sure? It does a compare and contrast. I'm going to say no. Proceed with yes. I'm going to reload. Okay. When this thing comes back up, all that is lost because all that running config in DRAM is what set that. The startup config in VRAM didn't happen. Okay. And the iOS is kept in Flash, which is electronically erasable program, electronic EEPROM, electronically erasable programmable read-only memory, or as we call it, Flash. So the iOS is stored in Flash. That's when the booter process is loaded up into memory as well. The startup memory is loaded up into the startup config is loaded up from an NVRAM. So if I do, let's do something real quick. Let me give you a demonstration. If I go in and change the host name, which is one of my favorite things to do, I think I already did that, but we'll keep doing it. I'm going to call it host JJA. Now it's JJA, but if I do a show run, you're going to notice host name is still is what I set it at here. But if I go to startup, show start, right, JJA, it's still going to be host name SW1. Okay, so if I want to save that next time I reboot, I got to do a copy run start. I can't tell you how much that's just programmed in my fingers. Okay, because I just reloaded this switch, so I've never created it before. So yes. Now if I go back and change the host name, config T, and I'm going to do a host name SW1 is much better than JJA, but I didn't save it yet. If I do a dir NVRAM, right, I'm going to see, here's the startup config, okay? That's where it actually lives, is in NVRAM, okay? We can copy to, so if I had a TFTP server here, copy run to a TFTP server, right? And it's going to want the IP address of the server, right? That kind of thing. Okay, I'll dump out of that. Control C. So you copy it up to a real FTP server. It doesn't work 100% well. Secure FTP. TFTP is kind of the quick throw up, lazy thing to do it. And you can also do WebDAV with the newest ones. It is common for people to set up scripts and macros. So case in point over here, if I was to, let me bring up a notepad editor. If I was able to write a script, here's some notes from other classes. You can see my exciting life. Let's go to Scratchpad. Be disturbed. That's a good advice. What happened there? Oh, there it is. Okay, that's weird. All right. Oh, these are people's names. Let's not do that. All right, let's just do a new one. All right. So if I was to set up a, so if I do config T, and then we'll just stick on this host name one. Host name second, right? And then oh, it'd be nice if I spelled config correctly. Config T, host name second, and then I'll do an exit to bring me back to enable mode, and even I'll do a copy run start, right? So if I copy this as a script, I can just simply paste it right into this. Nothing's stopping me, right? As you can see right here, I hit paste. Excuse me, and it ran those commands, right? So I did I was in enable mode, did config T, host name became second, right? Then I type exit and went back to the enable mode, did a copy and run start. Okay, so there I am. I had to hit enter. I could have actually put an enter in it, and it would have done it automatically for me. It would have put it in as the buffer. So that's a pretty powerful tool, and I've done it before. Okay, now my host name is second. All right. So that's like a macro or a script. I never got big on macros, simply because if I was going to do something, I might as well just type it out, especially with the tabbing. But that's, I know really good engineers that did do that, so there's nothing wrong with it. But scripts is something I would use all the time. I would back up my configs, I would copy and paste and reconfigure a switch on the fly, right? So there are many tricks and shortcuts to iOS. Question mark's very handy, as you saw. You can connect via console port, telnet, SSH, or auxiliary port. The way you'd set up SSH is you go in those VTY connections and you change the transport. We're going to do that in a lab. We'll change it to SSH. That way we can actually have encrypted data to protect our data in flight. The show command is important to view configurations. You can use the pipe command to filter the data. Banners, host names, descriptions, documentation, help inform users. Please put descriptions on ports. That'd be nice. iOS can be scripted and macroed too. I guess 2 should be TOO. Or as well. And last, configs can be uploaded and downloaded via TFTP, FTP, and WebDAV, which we'll do a little bit later in some other labs too. People like to upload and download configs to their local TFTP server. So we'll play with that later. We won't set up a TFTP server in GNS3 because that would be silly. So, all right. Hopefully you find this helpful. I'll talk to you later. Bye.